I wonder if you're one of those people that tends to overthink everything. I know that I have been that person. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned from that is make a decision and then make your decision right. So I'm Kerry Tepedino. I'm very excited to be here with you with the Happy and Healthy with Kerry show. And today, what we're talking about is why you overthink everything. And so let's dive in. Actually, as we're going into this training, I would love to hear from you. Are you somebody who tends to overthink? If you are, post below, call yourself out so you don't keep protecting the habit or protecting the way of being, but you expose it. When we expose these ways of being about ourselves, then what we get to slowly start to do is decharge them. And decharging them allows us to take our power back and get empowered again in regards to reprogramming how we show up, how we act, how we think, and our belief system. And when you have at least one other human being on this planet aware of what's going on and what you're committed to shifting, there's a whole new level of accountability that comes into play. So, are you an overthinker? Post below. I know that I used to be more so. I probably still am at some points, but nowhere near what I used to be. And that's because I really saw how it impacted and influenced me in a way that wasn't serving me. And I decided to shift it. So, one of the things that I've realized with overthinking is it allows us to have this like illusion of being in control, right? So, one of the things with human beings is we don't want to feel helpless. Like feeling helpless is a really, really painful emotion for human beings. And so when we feel one of the ways we avoid feeling hopeless is overthinking things because it gives us this illusion of, well, if I'm thinking about it, then I must be in some sort of control of the situation, or I haven't made a decision. I'm thinking and thinking about it, so it's keeping the ball in my court, or it still allows me to be able to make the decision, or whatever it is. But unfortunately, what happens is there's definite long term effects of overthinking. It can create more stress, worry, anxiety, and all of those things can create obviously physical issues, sleeplessness, digestive issues, migraines. I mean, it can really create a lot of distress in our lives. So, what if you allowed yourself to start to like stop the overthinking pattern and start to learn to really make decisions, and after you make that decision you choose to make that decision right. So you start to make a decision and then you make the decision right. And you might say, well, do you mean by that, Kerry? And what I mean is, when you make a decision you give it everything you've got. Doesn't mean that you might not need to course correct at some point, but at least it's taking you out of that cycle, like that hamster wheel of the indecision, which expends so much time and so much energy. And what if you put all that time and energy that was feeding and fueling the indecision, you put that into making a decision? What could happen for you in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, or a week or a month if you put all that time and energy into moving forward versus cycling through being stuck and having the same thoughts, overthinking, being anxious, being stressed, and not moving forward, not moving forward. So make a decision and then make that decision right. Doesn't mean you can't course correct or negotiate that decision at some point, but let's get you out of the cycle. Let's get you out of the pattern of non action. So, what we're also doing here is creating what we call a pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt is when you do something different than the normal pattern, and it interrupts that pattern, which it like sidetracks the circuitry, the messages that are being sent out from your brain. It like cuts it off and sidetracks it so that you can create a different result. Because if you continue to overthink and you continue to spin, you continue to have the same actions. you can't expect to have a different result. Different action creates different results. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about that I've noticed with a lot of people, and this is me too, but they tend to overthink things when they're a perfectionist. Okay. So here's the thing about perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't about actually being perfect. Perfectionism is about feeling as if you're perfect, right? But none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. Perfectionists tend to overthink because then it distracts them from having to feel as if they're not good enough or they're less than or they didn't perform well, right? So it's an out for perfectionists. If you're overthinking things and you stay in that cycle of thinking, then you don't have to actually see that, wow, I'm not perfect, because you're focusing on something else. So if you're a perfectionist, I I wouldn't be surprised if you have the tendency sometimes, or a lot of the times, to overthink things, because it's a great distraction than actually getting into action and then possibly facing the reality that you're not perfect, which none of us are perfect. So let's just cut yourself a break, have some radical acceptance, and show yourself a ton of love in regards to who you are and that there's nothing wrong with you, even though you're not perfect. And allow yourself to stop fearing what other people think of you, or judging yourself, or fear of conflict, or whatever is backing up the perfectionism and the overthinking. Okay. So, with this whole thing, if you want to stop overthinking, understand why you fall into the overthinking trap in the first place. Like, what gets you into that predicament? Is it that you learned that way of being in childhood? Is it that you have this illusion of being in control? Or is it that you feel like there's an illusion of certainty, like you're going to get certain results if you make a certain decision, which, you know, there is really no certainty to pretty much anything in this world. We get to be on the journey. Are you a perfectionist? Is it perfectionism that puts you into that overthinking trap? Like, what is happening for you? And post below, I want to hear what happens for you that gets you into the overthinking trap. How is that working for you, and are you ready to shift it? Okay, so shifting it would be to be willing to just get into some action, make a decision, and then make the decision right. Get into some action that is going to move you forward and take you out of that hamster wheel of overthinking and not taking any action, that will feed the cycle and get you really deflated. Most likely at some point you're going to get deflated. So take some action, make a decision, and then make the decision right. Post below. I want to hear, are you resonating with this? Is this landing with you? Can you, is this you? I know for sure I used to fall into this 110%. And I was also a perfectionist, right? I really wanted to look perfect and have the perfect words and the perfect relationship and blah 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 blah. And so I set myself up to fail a lot of the times, because none of us are perfect. So post below. I want to hear, how is this resonating? What are you going to implement in the next 24 hours to create a shift for yourself? And let's have some fun here. Let's start to change this habit, transform this habit, expand your thinking, expand your way of showing up for yourself in your life. Thank you in advance for sharing, hitting share, and sharing this with everybody you know. Let's stand for all of our friends and our family to have a more confident relationship with themselves and belief around within themselves, so that they can be limitless, right? You get to be limitless, they get to be limitless as well. With all that being said, let's have some fun with this, and I will see you soon. Bye.